Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Module 2 on export incentives. So some of you would have already been part of this series. In April 2019, we conducted Module 1, in which we gave an overview of foreign trade policy, MEIS and SEIS scheme. In Module 2 today, we'll be covering advance authorization, DFIA, and duty drawback. And Module 3 will be launching in September 2019, in which we'll cover EPCG scheme, deemed exports, and export refunds and procedures under GST. With this, we'll start today's session. So in today's session, we'll be covering primarily input stage benefits. These benefits are given in the form of duty exemption on imports, namely advance authorization and duty-free import authorization. These are alternately given in the form of duty drawback. And lastly, we'll cover the way forward. So before we start the session, I will give you a background as to how we'll be running the session today. Firstly, based on our experience, many of the exporters, they have confusion about these benefits as to which benefit is available or not. When the question of taking licenses or scripts come, there is a fear in the mind that there are a lot of procedures, there are a lot of risks, etc. involved. So the objective of today's session is to clear all those doubts. To that extent, we have made today's session covering basics of all these schemes, what are the various provisions, options, etc. So we have kept it generic rather than relating to any sector. So with this, we'll start the today's session. When we come to schemes, all the input related schemes can be categorized into two parts. One is a duty exemption scheme. So as the name suggests, there is an exemption from payment of duty. So if there is an exporter who wants to import any raw materials, ordinarily he should have paid BCD and IGST. The red color of BCD suggests that it is a cost, IGST is creditable, but under these duty exemption schemes, these are exempt. These come with an obligation on the manufacturer exporter to export his products. Then we come to duty remission scheme. Again, as the name suggests, that there is a remission. So remission is subsequent reimbursement of duty. So an exporter will import the products, pay full duties. Thereafter, he export his final product. Based on the export of products, he is granted a refund, which is drawback, which reimburses the duty paid by him on his inputs. So duty exemption scheme, government has granted two alternate schemes, advance authorization and DFIA. Duty remission scheme, it is duty drawback. Now coming to advance authorization. So the objective is to enable duty-free import of inputs for export purposes. So we'll be discussing each of these expressions threadbare. Who is eligible? So two types of taxpayers are eligible. One is manufacturer exporter. Second is merchant exporter tied to a supporting manufacturer. Which all duties are exempt? BCD, which is basic customs duty. Importantly, IGST and compensation cess. These are optionally exempt. So an exporter can choose to claim the exemption or pay them. And third set of duties are countervailing duties, anti-dumping duty, and safeguard duty. So in this list, there is one tax which is levied on imports which I have not covered till now, which is SWS, Social Welfare Surcharge. So if the foreign trade policy does not specifically cover SWS, does it mean SWS is payable? Answer is no. The reason is SWS is levied as a percentage of BCD. Therefore, if the main BCD itself is exempt, there is an automatic exemption for SWS as well. As far as CVD, anti-dumping duty and safeguard duty are concerned, these exemptions are not available if the supplies are made to EOU, STP, EHTP, BTP or EPCG holder. So if the supplies are made to these category of customers, then only exemption of BCD and IGST compensation cess can be claimed. Important to note, there is a definition of manufacturer exporter. Manufacturer exporter is a person who export goods manufactured by him or intends to export such goods. So manufacturer exporter is a person who actually manufactures and has an export order. As far as merchant exporter is concerned, he's a person who is a trader who only has an export order, who ties up with a supporting manufacturer. So in case of merchant exporter, the goods are actually manufactured by supporting manufacturer, but physical exports are done by the merchant exporter. Coming to sourcing of inputs. So what are the categories of inputs procurements? So an authorization holder can import the inputs. He can procure them from a special economic zone. He can also make domestic procurements against advance release order and an invalidation letter. So we'll be discussing in detail how an ARO and invalidation letter works. But yes, these are the sources in which an authorization holder can get his inputs. So let's firstly take an example of an import by a merchant exporter. So there is a merchant exporter, he imports product X. Ordinarily, on import of such products, BCD and IGST was payable, but he takes an advance authorization. Based on that, BCD and IGST are exempt. Therefore, he does not pay any duty at all. He has tied himself to a supporting manufacturer. So even though the imports are done by the merchant exporter, but goods are physically supplied to supporting manufacturer. Supporting manufacturer makes the export product. He raises a tax invoice, charges GST of 0.1%, which is a concessional rate available under GST law for merchant export transactions, and physically export the goods. So in this entire case study, you'll observe that even though the merchant exporter is not physically manufacturing the product, he's taking help of a supporting manufacturer. Even then, all his imports are duty free. The supporting manufacturer only charges GST of 0.1%, which is again available as credit to the merchant exporter. Goods are physically dispatched from supporting manufacturer's premises, and this meets the export obligation under advance authorization as well. Case study 2. How does an advance release order works. There is a vendor, he imports product X, he pays BCD and IGST. There is a manufacturer exporter, he is also an advance authorization holder, he imports product Z. So in this example, we are contemplating a situation where multiple goods are used for manufacture of export goods. The vendor undertakes manufacturing activity, supplies product Y on payment of GST to manufacturer exporter. So now the manufacturer exporter has got Y on payment of GST, Z under advance authorization without payment of any import duties. He manufactures the export product. Because the vendor is making supply to an advance authorization holder, he gets drawback of BCD paid on product X. Manufacturer exporter makes the product A and exports it to the foreign buyer. So to summarize again, advance release order, it enables a domestic manufacturer who is making some intermediate supplies to a manufacturer exporter to take drawback of whatever BCD etc. has been paid on his imports. Let's contradistinct it with invalidation letter. Same example, vendor, he imports product X. On the import of product X, he would have been ordinarily liable to pay BCD and IGST, but he takes an advance authorization, so he does not pay any import duties at all. Manufacturer exporter is also an advance authorization holder. He pays BCD and IGST. He would have ordinarily paid, but because of advance authorization, these duties also become zero. The manufacturer exporter gives an invalidation letter to vendor, which helps him to procure product Y, and this discharges the obligation of vendor as well. Vendor charges GST, which is available as credit to manufacturer exporter. Manufacturer exporter makes product A and exports the same to the foreign buyer. So primarily the difference between ARO and invalidation letter is that ARO entitles vendor to claim drawback of duty paid on procurements, whereas an invalidation letter enables the vendor to import those goods duty free. Proceeding further, what is the eligible category of goods? First is raw materials. So as the name suggests that these materials should be physically incorporated in export product. Second, fuel, oil and catalyst. So the eligibility is not restricted to raw materials alone. Even the consumables like fuel etc. can be procured. Mandatory spares, which is 10% of CIF. These are typically relevant when you are exporting machinery etc. So whatever spares are required for those machine exports, those can be procured. Packing material. And yes, for all the above categories, whatever normal wastages are there, those are also accounted for while permitting duty-free procurement. The scheme also recognizes accounting of inputs. So the exporter needs to match the quantity, name and description of inputs mentioned in A on the shipping bill as well. Output supplies. So these are the categories of output which will be reckoned towards your advance authorization obligation. In other words, if you have got materials under advance authorization and you make supply to any of these category of customers, those will meet your export obligation. So this covers physical goods, which means taking goods out of India, intermediate supply before completion of finished goods, which we saw in the example of invalidation letter, supply to SEZ, UUs, etc., supply to an EPCG holder, supply to ICB, International Competitive Bidding Projects, United Nations, International Organization, nuclear projects, etc. So what is the quantum of inputs you can procure? So to that extent, the foreign trade policy is very flexible. Firstly, under foreign trade policy, the government has made standard input-output norms. So standard input-output norms means they have defined against one particular output how much inputs are permissible. So say for example, my export product is car. So it will permit, I can procure 5 tires, 1 engine, 1 chassis, 1 steering, etc., etc. So SION is the standard defined input-output norms where both generic as well as alternate inputs are permitted. If you have an export product for which SION has not been defined, you can go for prior fixation of ad hoc norms. So in this case, you need to approach to a norms committee in DGFT in which you will propose your input-output norm. The norms committee will verify that and then will fix the ad hoc norms. Norms committee will also specify the period for which these norms will be valid, which can be maximum 2 years. Proceeding further, self-declaration. So in a situation where SION and ad hoc norms do not exist, or there is a situation where an exporter wants to use additional inputs, then he can make the procurements based on self-declaration. This will be subsequently ratified by the norms committee. Yes, in self-declaration, the government has made a list of ineligible goods for which self-declaration is not permitted. The last category, which is being created for AO holders, which is self-ratification scheme. In this scheme, pre-import condition is mandatory. So in the subsequent slides, we'll be discussing what is pre-import condition. A chartered engineer certificate is also needed. So based on that, an exporter can make the procurements, submit it to the authorities, which will be subsequently verified by them. So even in self-ratification scheme, there is a category of ineligible goods for which the scheme does not apply. So with this, we come to pre-import condition. So I'll hand over the session to our partner, Poonam, who will run us through the pre-import condition, the remaining part of advance authorization, DFIA. Yeah.
Thank you, Puneet. So as Puneet mentioned that in certain situations, the advance authorization imports are subject to pre-import conditions. As a matter of the policy provision, any inputs that are procured or from overseas or domestically procured are actually subject to actual user condition. Actual user is defined under the policy to be a person who could be a natural person or a legal entity who is authorized to use imported goods in its premises and has a definitive postal address. Actual user also covers a jobbing unit, which means an advance authorization holder can import and provide the goods to its job worker for manufacture of finished goods to be exported. Since the inputs imported under the advance authorizations are subject to actual user condition, these goods cannot be transferred even if there is some surplus remaining after fulfillment of the export obligation. For certain cases under the policy, the imports under advance authorization are subject to the pre-import condition, which means that the inputs which are to be procured under advance authorization need to be first imported, and only then can the exports be made using those inputs. Some of these inputs are actually mentioned within the foreign trade policy provisions, and there is also an appendix 4J appended to the policy, which covers products which are subject to advance or pre-import condition. Examples being tea, raw sugar, natural rubber, and fabrics. The exemption from IGST for imports by advance authorization holders is subject to pre-import condition. This was initially introduced when the exemption were on the import IGST exemption was granted on imports by advance authorization holders. Now let's look at the chronology of events in terms of how the exemption was introduced under IGST for imports by advance authorization holders. As we all know, the GST came into play from 1st of July 2017. However, initially till October 13, 2017, there was no exemption from IGST for import by advance authorization holders, which means that for this period, only exemption from BCD was available for such license holders. Thereafter, under the policy, the IGST exemption was granted. And at that time, the policy provisions were introduced in a manner that IGST exemption was made subject to pre-import condition. Later on, there was this provision was withdrawn with effect from January 10, 2019. Now, there exists controversy around what happens to the imports which happened between the period October 13, 2017 to January 10, 2019, since in many cases importers missed to notice the pre-import condition being applicable on advance authorizations where the importers had claimed IGST exemption. Judicially, the matter proceeded like this. In October 2018, the matter went before the Bombay High Court, wherein in the case of Vedanta, Messrs. Vedanta Limited, the pre-import condition under the policy was upheld. The court found that the condition is not unreasonable and is within the administrative powers of the government to impose such conditions as a condition for grant of IGST exemption. Later, in February 2019, in the case of Maxim Tubes, Gujarat High Court said that the condition is ultra-virus on the grounds that it is too vague, harsh, and impossible to meet. Now, the issue exists that for any past violations for the period October to January 2019, If these violations are identified now, should the importers go ahead and pay IGST, or should they be claiming exemption since the High Court has now struck down the condition as the ultra-vires? Now, the answer to this would actually depend on various fact patterns specific to specific importers. However, in case of importers who are eligible for claim for IGST on their imports, it's preferred that if they identify the instances of pre-import condition not being met with during the period October 17 to January 19, they may choose to pay GST and avail credit thereon. At the same time, it's likely that the department may still pursue to recover interest and penalty in such cases. Therefore, since the condition itself is ultra-vires, it's open for the importers to contest if there is a demand of interest or penalty in these cases. Now let's look at some other procedural aspects with respect to advance authorizations. Firstly, the validatory period for import of inputs under such licenses is initially for a period of 12 months from the date of issuance of advance authorization. This can get revalidated by a period of 6 months, further extendable by 6 months, which means effectively an advance authorization is typically available for a period of 2 years from the date it's issued. For fulfillment of export obligation under the advance authorization, a period of 18 months from the date of issuance of the license is permitted, which is again extendable by a period of 6 months, further by 6 months, and therefore a total period of 30 months is effectively available for fulfillment of export obligations. The realization for exports under advance authorization needs to be in freely for a convertible foreign exchange, which is applicable normally in case of normal exports and for deemed exports. There are 2 exceptions to this rule. One is the supply by an SEZ unit, supply to an SEZ unit. In that case, the realization can be from the foreign currency account of the SEZ unit. And in case of supply to an SEZ developer or a co-developer, the realization can be in Indian currency, and that's considered as compliance to the export realization condition under the advance authorization. The period for by which the export proceeds need to be realized are as per the RBI guidelines. Once the export obligations are fulfilled, the license holder needs to obtain an export obligation discharge certificate from its regional authority. Now, in terms of export obligation, the license holder is required to make a minimum value addition of 15% on the exports vis-a-vis the import of products which are on which duty benefit has been claimed by him. The value addition formula goes like this, which is A minus B divided by B. A being the free on board value of exports realized, or the free on rail value of supplies received under the advance authorization, and B being the CIF value of inputs on which duty benefit has been claimed, including any inputs on which drawback has been claimed by the importer. Let's look at it by way of an example, where the FOB value of an export is 1,000 rupees and the CIF value of imported goods by an advance authorization holder is 750 rupees. The value addition equals 1,000, the value of exports, minus the CIF value of inputs, which is 750, the difference being 250, divided by the CIF value of inputs, which is 750 again, which works out to 33.33%. So in this case, the value addition criteria gets fulfilled. Now, what happens in case there is an FOC import of goods? That could be typically in the case of import by a job worker. So in case there is a foreign principal who intends to send goods for job work to an Indian job worker for conversion into finished goods and re-export to the principal. In such case, the material that would be imported by the job worker, there would be no foreign exchange payout, and also there would be no export realization in respect of the finished goods that are being exported. Now, does that mean that this kind of model is not eligible for advance authorization? The answer to this is no. The policy specifically permits FOC imports of inputs with the condition that when these goods are used for manufacture of export goods, both in the value of imported goods and in the value of exported goods, the value of FOC imports needs to be counted. So in this example, we see that the principal manufacturer who's sending goods to a job worker in India, the job worker being an advance authorization holder is able to procure the raw material sent by the principal without payment of BCD and IGST. And in turn, when the goods are manufactured and exported, the advance authorization holder can export them under LUT without charging IGST. Now, in this case, let's take example that the product which was imported by the job worker was at the rate of 100 rupees a unit, and the job work charges for such importer was 20 rupees. Now, the other component of the supplies by the job worker is the domestic inputs, the cost of which is being recovered from the foreign principal, which is in our example 25 rupees. Now let's look at how the value addition will be counted in this case. Now, since the provision says that the import value of FOC supplies needs to be counted both towards the value of imports and the value of exports, therefore the value addition will be counted by adding 100 to the job worker charges and the charges recovered towards inputs, which total up to 145 in this case, deducted by the value of imported goods, which works out to 100, divided by the total value of exports, which is 145, and therefore the value addition works out to 31.03%. An advance authorization can also be procured for annual requirement by an importer. So for an importer who knows that he would have regular raw material or packaging material and other eligible material requirements for manufacture of its export products, instead of reaching out to the DGFT on a piecemeal basis for seeking advance authorization, he can opt for an advance authorization on an annual basis. This facility is available for items only notified in the SION. So for the other export quantum methods that Puneet explained in the previous session, that those are not entitled for imports under advance authorization. So only if the product to be exported is covered up within the SION is the annual authorization, and import under annual requirement is permitted. The other aspect is that the import in this case cannot be is not allowed for goods which are subject to pre-import conditions. Like we mentioned before, that such items are mentioned under the Appendix 4J of the policy. Another important condition for seeking this benefit is that the exporter must have export performance in the last 2 preceding financial years. Now, how is the entitlement counted for seeking advance authorization for annual requirement? This is counted as a CIF value of imports and is counted as the higher of 1 up to 300% of the FOB value of physical exports or the FOR value of deemed exports in the preceding financial year or rupees 1 crore. So either of the two, the higher of the two, is eligible as the value for which advance authorization is allowed. Now, before we move further, we would like to do a poll question. Okay, so the question that must be there on your screens is, do you have any open advance authorizations with shortfall in exports against some and excess exports against others? We would allow 30 seconds for you to answer. All right, so we do have the poll results now, which say that 33% say yes, that they do have situation where they are falling short of fulfilling export obligation under some of the licenses, while against others, they have surplus exports. So for this population of the audience, there is a good news. The policy provides for a specific benefit, which is to club multiple advance authorizations. The objective of this facility is not really to extend benefits in terms of the volume of export or volume of import quantums allowed, or to extend the validity period of export or imports, but just to regularize situations where there is a genuine mistake in reporting the advance authorizations under which the imports have been made vis-a-vis the advance authorizations that were reported in the shipping bills when the goods were exported. This scheme is available for advance authorization where similar duty exemption has been availed. And the scheme is available for import of common inputs which are under either SION or ad hoc norms. So for self-declaration and self-ratification scheme, this clubbing of licenses is not permitted. There are certain conditions with respect to clubbing of the licenses, which are as follows. Advance authorization can be issued only with respect to those licenses which fall within a period of 18 months, which means that if there are multiple licenses, the license, the date of issue of the first license vis-a-vis the date of issue of the last license cannot be more than 18 months apart. Secondly, the imports can be made only within 30 months from the date of the earliest of advance authorization, and the export obligation period gets counted in case of club license from the date of issue of the earliest advance authorization. To illustrate this further, let's look at an illustration. So we take a case where there are 4 advance authorizations. The first one being dated 31st July 2017. Second one being issued on January 15, 2018. The third one dated August 31st, 2018. And the fourth one being issued on March 25, 2019. Now in this case, looking at the first condition, that the earliest license cannot be more than 18 months older than the last license that we intend to club. So in this example, one of the options that's available to the importer is to club licenses 1, 2, and 3, because these fall within a period of 18 months from the date of issue of first advance authorization. If this option is resorted to, then the import validity period will be counted from the date of the issue of the first license, which is July 31st, 2017 in this case. So the imports can be made under the clubbed license latest by 31st January 2020. Also, in this example itself, the export obligation period will be considered as having commenced from 31st July 2017, which is the date of issue of earliest license. Now we've covered almost all basic key aspects of advance authorization. The other type of license that's covered under chapter 4 of the FTP is the DFIA. Largely, the two types of licenses are identical, and therefore the conditions, the eligibility criteria, the import types, the export supplies, etc. remain the same. So in this section, we just focus on the key distinctions between the two types of licenses. Now, the benefit under the advance authorization is available both pre and post export. However, DFIA is a purely post export benefit, which means that the benefit is entitled only once the DFI holder has already exported the goods. The duty exemption that's available to an advance authorization holder, like Puneet had taken us through, are in respect of all duties of customs, whereas under DFIA, only BCD can be claimed as an exemption. The minimum value addition criteria under the advance authorization is 15%, whereas under DFIA it's 20%. Advance authorization license is actually not transferable. As opposed to this, DIFL is a transferable license. Consequently, while for advance authorization holders, there is no concept of exchange or transfer of advance authorizations, there being possibility to sell a DFIA in the market. The question is whether such a sale would be liable to GST or not. This license being in the nature of a DGFT scrip is exempt from GST. The consequential impact of this exemption is that any exclusive or common procurements with respect to such sale of licenses, there is a requirement to reverse input tax credits. With this, we now move on to the next section, which is duty drawback. I invite my colleague Himanshu to take us through this section, please.
Thank you, Poonam, for sharing insights on DFI and other provisions of AA. So the topic is allocated to me. It's duty drawback. So the first thing is what is the objective of giving the duty drawback? So the first thing is just to prevent the export of taxes. So suppose an importer is importing goods and paying BCD on it, which is a cost in the system. So at the time of export, he might add the BCD in those exported products. So with this, the cost of BCD will also be transferred to the foreign buyer. So to prevent that cost, this benefit is available to the exporter on duty paid by him at the time of import in the form of rebate or refund. Second is that duties exempted under drawback is, as I mentioned, that BCD paid at the time of import and the excise duty paid on inputs. Under GST regime, excise duty is applicable only on the products which are not covered under the GST Act, like alcoholic and petroleum products. And those goods, when used in the manufacture of exported goods, the benefit of duty drawback can be claimed. So duty drawback is available if you import the goods and exported one as such. Second is that you import the goods and use it for some time and then export it. So certain percentages are allowed under this scheme. So suppose if you are importing the goods and exporting as such, then 98% of the BCD paid at the time of import can be claimed as drawback. And if you are importing and using it for some time and then exporting it, then certain percentages are defined. So to that extent, duty drawback benefit is available. Second aspect to that is that you import the goods and paid BCD on those goods, and you are using it for manufacturing of export goods. Then in that case, two options are available with the exporter. One is the all industry rate, which is a specified rate already mentioned in the form of a fixed percentage or fixed amount. Such benefit is, these are the standard rates prescribed every year. Here it is important to note that many times we have observed that people have not claimed duty drawback on export of goods with the perception of that it's a very complex procedure to claim the benefit. We wish to mention that it's not a very complex process. At the time of export, you need to mention on the shipping bill that drawback claim, that you are intended to claim the drawback on the shipping bill, and it's an automatic refund claim that you will receive in your bank account. Second aspect is that special brand rate. So special brand rate will be applicable only if AIR rate is not available, or AIR rate, the benefit available under AIR rate is less than the 80% of the duty paid on inputs. So suppose you have paid duty BCD on imported goods 8 rupees, and your benefit under AIR is coming out rupees 6. So then in that case you can apply for special brand rate because you have paid more duty and the benefit as per the AIR is less. To claim benefit under special brand rate, you need to file an application within 3 months from the let export order, and you can take extension up to 12 months. The it is important also to understand that whether the drawback is available on the exempted goods. So suppose your goods are exempted and you are not required to pay any GST when you are selling it in the domestic market. Such products you are exporting out of India, can drawback be claimed or not? So the answer is yes, you can claim the drawback on such goods also. And the procedure would be the same that you mentioned on the shipping bill at the time of filing, at the time of import. Like Poonam also discussed the comparison between A and DFIA. So in this slide, we are discussing the difference between A and DBK, that is drawback. So the first difference between the two is that advance authorization is available prior completion of exports and drawback is available post completion of exports. Under A, you can take upfront exemption of IGST till March 2020, and under DBK, as mentioned, that only BCD benefit is available on the same. As mentioned, that A is a complex procedure to claim the benefit as compared to drawback, wherein you need to mention on the shipping bill that you are intended to claim drawback benefit. The last is that advance authorization is administered by DGFT, whereas drawback claim is administered by Customs Authority. So with this, we have another poll question before the audience, and the same will be reflected in next 5 seconds. So the question is that which is more beneficial, advance authorization or drawback? So you have 30 seconds to answer. Okay, so we have the answers before us. So 65% of the audience believe that advance authorization is more beneficial. 25% of the audience believe that drawback is beneficial, and 10% audience is not sure about the same, that whether advance authorization is more beneficial or drawback claim. So it's not a straight jacket question that, or straight answer is not available for this, that whether advance authorization is more beneficial or duty drawback claim. For the same, you need to identify it whether in a particular case the advance authorization is more beneficial to you or duty drawback claim is more beneficial to you. So let us understand with the help of an example. So suppose under A, your CI value of imports is 250 rupees and your FOB value of exports is 1000 rupees. BCD applicable on imported goods at the rate of 10%, which comes out 25 rupees of 250. So total benefit available to you is 25 rupees under advance authorization. Simultaneously, under drawback claim, CI value of imports again 250, FOB value of exports 1000 rupees. Drawback rate is 3% on FOB value of exports, which comes out 30 rupees. So total benefit available is 30 rupees. So in this example, we can easily identify that drawback option is much better as compared to advance authorization. So in another example, we can understand that CI value of imports is 250, FOB value of exports is 1,000 rupees. BCD applicable at the rate of 10%, 25 rupees. Total benefit is 25 rupees. On the other hand, under drawback, value of import is 250, value of exports 1,000. Drawback claim is 1%, which comes out 10, and the benefit available to you is 10 rupees. So in this particular example, advance authorization is better as compared to drawback claim. So this addresses the question that we asked in the poll question few minutes back, that it is not a straight jacket formula that because under advance authorization upfront duty exemption is there, so that is more beneficial as compared to drawback. So for each transaction you need to identify, you need to see your the benefit available under advance authorization and drawback, and accordingly you can opt for the same. So in this slide, we have prepared a comparison chart between advance authorization, DFIA, duty-free import authorization, and drawback claim. So suppose drawback claim is higher as compared to BCD paid on inputs. So in this case, you should always opt for drawback claim because it gives you more benefit as compared to AA and DFIA. If drawback rate is lower as compared to BCD paid on inputs, and you are clear on fulfillment of export obligation, which you need to fulfill under AA and DFIA, then in that case you should opt for advance authorization and claim the upfront exemption of duties instead of DFIA and drawback claim. The third would be if drawback claim is lower as compared to BCD on inputs, but you have no clarity on whether you will export those goods or not, or you can meet the export obligation or not. Then in that case you can consider not to opt for advance authorization and claim the benefit under DFIA after exporting the goods, and cannot claim the consider not to claim the drawback claim. So the last thing will be the way forward for the discussion that we had on AA, DFIA, and drawback, and the session will be handed over to Puneet.
Thank you, Himanshu and Poonam, for running us through nuts and bolts of drawback and advance authorization scheme. So the last part of our session is way forward. So what we recommend to all of you is that in respect of your exports, evaluate whether you are claiming all the export incentives. You should do a comparison between various options, like in your business, which is more beneficial, whether it's advance authorization or DFIA versus drawback. You should ensure that the past compliances are being undertaken, obtain EODC so that a formal closure to these compliances is obtained. If there have been errors in the past, like Poonam explained in detail about clubbing of authorizations, then take remedial steps. Lastly, if the government does not extend the advance authorization exemption beyond March 2020, we need to do some inventory planning so that we get imports prior hand. So with this, we come to the end of the session, and thank you very much for all of you for joining in that large number and making this series a grand success. With this, we come to the Q&A part. So we have got multiple questions. So the first question is from Mr. Sanjay Subramanian. He's from Orient Craft. So his question is impact of delay in releasing incentives and the window of realization incentives attracts a loss in the rate of 3 to 5% of incentive value. So Mr. Sanjay, this question is more relevant from MEIS or SEIS perspective. So your understanding is right that even if you seek the claim late, then also the benefit is available. The maximum condonable period is 2 years, which comes with a late cut from 2 to 10% depending upon the delay. Then we have question from Mr. Rakesh Budhiraja from Greenland. His question is, what is the current status of refund of surcharge paid through MEIS? So yes, Mr. Rakesh, we highlighted this point in our last webinar also, that legally SWS should not be debited through MEIS, but the way presently the government portal is working, you need to end up debiting the same and claim refund. Then we have question of Mr. Jagannathan Sundarajan from Mando Automotive. The question is how to validate HSN code of motor vehicle parts, free trade goods versus advance authorization difference. So Mr. Jagannathan, yes, free trade agreements are independent agreements which India has entered with ASEAN countries, etc. So that is very different from advance authorization. So an FTA requires you to import goods from specified countries, meeting country of origin requirements, etc. They do not come with any export obligation. So with regard to validation of HSN code, Mr. Jagannathan, that you need to apply the classification principles like section notes, chapter notes, scope of headings, etc. To decide what should be the classification of motor vehicle parts. Then we have question from Mr. Mukesh Sharma, AES. We are an engineering company and do export of services. Is it eligible for export incentive? So yes, Mr. Mukesh, you are entitled for SEIS benefit. Then we have question from Mr. Prashant Arya from APMG. The question is, old manual shipping bill filed on single page, but items used in advance authorization are around 50. So the inputs are not mentioned on single page of shipping bill. How to correlate them inputs with export products so that the department accept them? So Mr. Prashant, we highlighted this in our session also, that in the shipping bill, if you're claiming benefit of advance authorization, you need to mention item-wise details. So this is a mandatory requirement, but if you're not able to do due to space constraints, etc., our suggestion is that you file an intimation with the authorities seeking their response on the same. Then the last question is from Mr. Narendra Singh. Can we claim DFIA and MEIS benefits both? Yes, Mr. Narendra Singh, the benefits which we covered in our first session, like MEIS, SEIS, those are one set of benefits. And this session, the today's session where we cover advance authorization, DFIA, these are independent benefits. So yes, you can claim MEIS with one of these, advance authorization oblique DFIA oblique drawback. Yes, you can claim the same. So with this, we come to the end of session, and thank you for attending this session.